What it do, everybody? Welcome to a Friday edition of The Sweat. It do be like that. The Sweat Fantasy Bracket Madness. It began yesterday.
It did.
We had Region G. The results are in.
Short for Georgia.
Yeah.
Short. That's my dog's name.
Okay.
Gretzky, Mays, Magic, Kareem, Westbrook, Tiger, Judge, Messi, all moving on. So the closest vote there was the battle between Magic Johnson and Christian McCaffrey, with MJ beating him out with 55% of the vote. Randy Johnson coming up just short despite
Garion's
rant yesterday, losing 56.6% to 43.4%. So we got more madness later. We got more analysts on that'll share their opinions on some of the matchups that you can vote for right now on the DK Live account. A lot coming up in the show. We'll get to NHL. We'll get to the NFL, NASCAR and F1 because F1 returns. But I believe we're going to start in the NBA.
With our NBA panel, which is just one man.
Yep, so
Nick
it's not a panel.
Fryer.
It's an analyst.
It's
an
analyst.
More than one.
Correct.
I can be a panel if you want me to.
No, you can just be an analyst. So, 10-game NBA slate. All right, Nick. Let's just go through. Who's a center over 8K? So somebody that maybe you want to pay up for a little bit in that spot.
I know you could easily go with Nikola Jokic here, and I mean, I'm not going to tell you not to, but I do like Jaren Jackson Jr. a lot, and obviously Jokic didn't do a whole lot the last time these two teams met. It was a little bit of a blowout. I think Domantas Sabonis is also a legitimate option too, especially if no Zubac tonight for the Clippers, who are on a second leg of a back-to-back. We'll get to them a little more later. But Bam Adebayo is the guy that I want to go with tonight, right at 8K. Going up against the Knicks. He dropped over 50 DK fantasy points against them early last month. No Mitchell Robinson in that game, who's, self-proclaimed the best center in New York, which I don't know how much that means these days. But that's okay that he's going to be in this game because if there's no Jimmy Butler, Bam is in a great spot because he gets the highest usage rate on the team with no Butler on the floor. And also a trend that I noticed too, Bam has sub 10 rebounds in 4 straight games. He has not gotten to 5 straight games at all this season without 10 rebounds. That's happened 2 times where he's had a stretch this long. And in those 2 games, 42 DK fantasy points and 52 DK fantasy points when he snapped those skids.
All right, what's the move at guard here? Guard north of 9K. So you got some big names here as expected. I mean, Devin Booker sitting right there at 9K even. And what did he drop there, right, Nick? Was it around like 37 points? That was in Durant's Suns debut?
I don't care because every time I'm on here with you, it's either Devin Booker or Lauri Markkanen. Can you talk about 2 other?
Okay,
NBA
all right, yeah.
Davis?
What about Dame Lillard? What do you have? 41 last time out, and that followed up the 71-point game. He's at the top of the board, 11-6. Could you make an argument for actually paying that chunk of salary for him tonight?
Yes, you can, but he is my second favorite guard when we're talking about the high-priced guards tonight. I think that Paul George, I know he's not over 9K. I know he's not one of those high-priced guys, but I really think Paul George is in a good spot tonight. I know it's the second leg of a back-to-back, but no Kawhi Leonard. He's gotten 60-plus DK fantasy points against the Kings both times this season. And I know it's been a little bit since Paul George played on the second leg of a back-to-back. Hasn't actually happened since the calendar flipped over to 2023. But in 5 of the 6 games that he has played in this setting, he's logged over 40 DK fantasy points, with the lone exception being the Clippers' first back-to-back of the season. And he's gone over 50 DK fantasy points twice on the second leg of a back-to-back.
All right, let's talk forward. Somebody over 9K. You could get KD here in this spot. He's 10-4, going to cost you a bit.
Yeah, but like we talked about last time when KD made his Suns debut, I just don't trust him quite yet at this price tag. I know when you look over the DK Sportsbook, his points prop is a little bit higher. It's 1 point higher than last time, hit the over last time. I'm comfortable with that number tonight, but I'm not comfortable with this price tag. You really only have 5 forwards to pick from in this price range. And look, Tatum is in a potential blowout spot. Anthony Edwards is in a potential blowout spot. KD too expensive for me. So it's basically Julius Randle or Lauri Markkanen.
It's going to be Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen.
I'm going to go with Emerson's guy today.
Yeah.
Let's go.
9.6K. I do think Randall is justifiable as well, but I think Markkanen, he's just in a better pace spot tonight. And we also just saw him drop 59.5 DK fantasy points against the Thunder right out of the break. He's getting a ton of usage right now. So I like him a lot. And also another guy, again, just outside of this 9K range, Brandon Ingram. I like him a lot too, 8.6K. He just dropped almost 60 DK fantasy points. He's been very productive lately, getting a ton of shot volume right now. So I like him in that spot, and I believe he's against the Warriors tonight.
Markkanen has gone for at least 43 DK fantasy points in 5 of the last 6 games. I'm reading one of Stan Sun's articles here on DK Nation with a high of 59.5, which happened to come versus the Thunder. So, Fryer, you actually look very smart by going with him. Now you have an opportunity to look smart when I ask you, give me a guard. Let's go value under 5K, dude.
Yeah, I think you'll go over at the Lakers. Obviously, there's a ton of usage because no LeBron James right now. Possibly AD back in the mix tonight. He's probable right now, but still plenty of opportunities for other guys to produce here. Austin Reeves and Lonnie Walker are the two guys that I'm looking at. I tend to lean more towards Reeves, but I think either one of them, you can fit them both in your lineups too. Of course, Reeves 4.1K, Lonnie Walker 3.7K going up against the Timberwolves. You look at both of those guys, they've provided 5x value on their price tags tonight in the 2 games LeBron has been out recently. Reeves obviously putting up a little bit more points, 27 and 34 DK fantasy points. Also, funnily enough, too, both of them, they had better performances with AD on the floor than off the floor in this recent 2 games stretch.
Okay.
All right, how about a value forward who's going to be under 5K, Nick?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a guy who I lean on quite often, Keegan Murray, especially of late, 4.5K going up against the Clippers. Last time he saw the Clippers, he was on the second leg of a back-to-back, and he provided over 5x value. Didn't have a ceiling performance, but he could very well have one tonight because he's had quite a bit of shot volume of like double-digit shot attempts in each of Sacramento's last 3 games. He hasn't actually done that all too often, only his like first few NBA games, and then there was one other stretch where he's done so. But we've seen him do well against the Clippers. Last time, like I said, he was short of 30 DK fantasy points, still 5x value, but the other 2 times he's seen the Clippers, over 30 DK fantasy points. So he's in a real good spot tonight with the Clippers on the second leg of a back-to-back.
All right, Nick, good stuff. Thanks for the help on the DFS side. We're going to bring Gary and Thorne in here in just a minute to talk about the sportsbook side of things. But if you rostered either Kyrie Irving or Luka Doncic last night, you guys ended up sitting pretty in the end of the night in whatever contest you were inside on DraftKings, because this is really what the Dallas Mavericks had in mind here. Kyrie Irving, Luka, Jesse becoming the first Mavs teammates to each score at least 40 points in the same game, powering Dallas to a big victory over the 76ers on Thursday night.
Yeah, but the question is, I mean, this is the first time we've seen them, in 6 games together, have like pretty good chemistry. They're only 2 and 4 when they've played together so far. So the question is, are they going to need to put up these numbers every time to keep getting the W?
For sure. And Garion is now with us. How much are you kind of reading into that last night and knocking off a damn good 76ers team, obviously one of the best teams in the East here? Or are we taking it with a grain of salt, knowing they were coming off, that was the second night of a back-to-back for them?
I mean, second night of a back-to-back, but Embiid didn't play in the first leg of that back-to-back. So it's a really good win, don't get me wrong, but I'm still thinking big picture, and I can't let a single performance change my mind about just how I felt about this trade initially, which, again, there are going to be nights where the Mavericks score 140 points, and that's great, but they're going to give up 126 points almost every night. So they have to score like this to win games, and I just don't think that's a sustainable formula for success, particularly in the playoffs where defense gets better.
Yep. Totally get that.
Yeah, they're probably not going to be able to score 40 plus
No.
every time they're on the floor together. Let's talk sportsbook plays on tonight's 10-game slate. So, Gary, let's head to Atlanta. Dame coming off a 41-point game against the Pelicans on Wednesday. So his point total for tonight sitting at 36.5. Can he do it again? Is he going over or under?
I mean, it would be easy just to say under. This is a very inflated prop. However, he's done it 17 of his 49 games so far this season. That doesn't seem like a great ratio, but it's been a lot more frequent lately. He's averaging over 37 points per game since the beginning of January. He's someone who in 5 of his last 6 games has managed to exceed 37 points. I mean, Dame's on one right now, and we know when Lillard gets hot, he can have these 2 or 3 week stretches where he's almost unstoppable. I think a really important part of this is the fact that Anthony Simons came back last night or 2 nights ago and then immediately had to leave the game with another injury. He's doubtful to play in this contest, and that just opens up so much more usage for Lillard. This is a really good matchup against the Hawks. They are a high-paced team, 6th in pace over their last 10 games, bottom third of the league in defensive rating in that same span of time. I say he goes over it. I just think Lillard's in a zone right now. I think he's going to put up probably 25 to 30 field goal attempts, and that's really all it takes.
All right, here we go. KD and the Suns in Chicago, dude. So they're 6-point favorites on the DK Sportsbook. So Booker dropping 37 in KD's debut the other night. Chris Paul with 11 dimes. That guy's just dishing the ball out like it's his job, which it is. 16 boards for Ayton. What prop you looking at in this one as the Suns really start to get settled in with this new rotation with Kevin Durant on board?
Yes, I'm going to actually go back to Booker. I was just very impressed by what he was able to do in that contest with Durant. And obviously, KD is still on a bit of a minutes restriction, played around 26 minutes in that first game with the Suns. I'd expect that number to be pretty similar tonight. The Suns were very cautious bringing back Devin Booker from his long-term injury a couple weeks back, but that is no longer the case with Booker. He's exceeded 35 minutes a couple of times in his last 3 games. Didn't have to play quite that many minutes in that last win you were talking about, but, you know, very rudimentary basketball sort of like 1 + 1 is 2 level thinking. You're like, Devin Booker's going to take fewer shots because Kevin Durant's around. I actually think it's going to be Chris Paul who really ends up sacrificing most of his, you know, offensive workload, or at least scoring workload. He's going to continue to dish out assists and kind of lead this offense, but 40% usage rate for Devin Booker in that game with Kevin Durant. That's not sustainable, but I really do think it's a good indication of what he's going to continue to do, even with Kevin Durant in town. I like Devin Booker to go over 24.5 points tonight. With no minutes restriction, I just think that's a pretty low number for a guy who has the scoring acumen that Booker has.
All right. Is there another prop that you're looking at tonight, Garion?
Yeah. Real sexy one. This is
love sexy.
Friday night.
Sexy.
Everyone's talking about Markelle Fultz and his 3-pointers prop for tonight. That's the big talking point on Friday. 0.5. Over under 0.5 made 3-pointers for Markelle Fultz. And this is kind of a fun one. I mean, remember, Fultz was someone who basically just vanished off the face of the earth after being a high lottery pick 5-6 years ago. And specifically, he forgot how to shoot. He had to relearn his entire shooting mechanics. It looked terrible for a long time. And suddenly he's made a 3-pointer in 5 of his last 7 games. He's not a great 3-point shooter. He's not a high volume 3-point shooter, but in a game against Charlotte, where Charlotte rates first in pace in their last 5 games, there's going to be a lot of possessions in this contest, a lot of shots. I think Fultz, who's now at least a league average 3-point shooter, can go over 0.5, and this is a really juicy one at plus 135 to the over.
All right, which game total do you like here, Gary? And I'm going to point out Nets Celtics, not only because it's going down in our own backyard here, 227, but I saw DK Sportsbook tweet out a little while ago, Boston and Brooklyn have gone over the total in 6 of their past 7 games inside TD Garden.
So I'm going to actually go back to this Orlando-Charlotte game.
Wow.
Because, you know, again, the big game of the night. I know people want bets about this one. This total's way too high. It's 226.5. These are 2 teams that cannot score. They are both bottom 8 in offensive rating across their last 10 games. And you can see right now the total is falling as we speak. I'm moving lines here.
Hell yeah, brother.
So get on this fast. I still like it at 225.5, by the way. They just can't score. And Charlotte has sneakily been one of the better defensive teams in basketball the last couple of weeks. They actually sit 2nd in defensive rating behind only the Milwaukee Bucks in their last 5 games. And wouldn't you know it, in those 5 games, Charlotte is 5-0 to the under. Orlando, very similar team in terms of construct. They cannot score, they cannot shoot, and they are great defensively. They are 8-2 to the under in their last 10 games. So I'm honestly shocked this number is as big as it is.
Gary, and how about a spread or money line? For a spread, you got the Grizzlies at the Nuggets. Denver favored by 5.5, and the Grizzlies struggle a lot on the road. 12-18 straight up, 10-18-2 against the spread on the road this season.
So I know Nick was giving Emerson some crap because
that's what he
was talking
always
about the
does.
same players over and over again. I mean, what else is new? That's what Nick does.
Mm-hmm.
Picks on Emerson, but I'm going to go back to a bet I feel like I've probably made 15 times this year, which is just the Knicks on the spread. They are 2.5 point favorites against the Heat right now. Across their last 10 games, they are second in the NBA in net rating. They are outscoring opponents by almost 12 points per 100 possessions. That is in the same territory as the Milwaukee Bucks, who are currently on that crazy win streak. I mean, it's the Bucks and the Knicks, and then it's everyone else. That's the kind of company they're keeping as of late since this Josh Hart trade. The Knicks have also just been one of the best teams in basketball at covering on the road. They are 20-10 ATS. They're 30 games on the road this season. Conversely, the Heat are 9-20-1 against the spread at home this season. They are 1-9 ATS their last 10 games overall. And Jimmy Butler is questionable for this game. You never like to see anyone on the Heat injury report questionable or doubtful because generally speaking, it means they are not going to play. So I just think everything is working in the Knicks' favor right now. Even in Miami, I think they cover as favorites.
All right, dude. Thanks, man. Enjoy your weekend. We'll catch up with you here on The Sweat next week. More basketball, though. Right here is conference tournament time. It's ramping up. Regular season is wrapping up. So Colin and Julian had so much fun on The Sweat the other day together. They decided to keep talking college hoops on unreasonable odds.
Oh.
We're doing 5 minutes conference tournaments here overall, so we're going to be real quick. This is going to be the small conference section, minute each or less before we go some bigger conferences. Here are my 2 small conference plays. One, I don't know what you'll feel about. One, I know you're going to go against. I have Youngstown State in the horizon at plus 180. They're the best team there. I'm a little nervous that Thursday they have to play against Detroit and someone who's probably about to become the all-time leading scorer in college basketball, which is pretty amazing. But they just need to win one 1-8 home game. And then they're off the weekend and they go to the neutral court. There'll be 2 neutral games, a Monday and then the championship Tuesday. Youngstown State was plus 180 on DK. It's down to plus 165. I think I like the Penguins, which is the favorite to get it done. And this is probably the only other favorite that I'm going to give out before I give larger dogs in the big conferences. I played the Zags minus 115 in West Coast Conference. You're a St. Mary's guy. Gonzaga they're not the regular Zags team. I'm going to fade them in the NCAA tournament. Gonzaga has clearly proven they're the better team than St. Mary's. They outplayed them on the road for this isn't the NBA. For 36 minutes. 33, sure.
Well,
outplayed them on the road.
Overtime. Yeah, 36. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, outplayed them on the road for like 35 plus minutes. Yeah. Let go of the rope on the road in a tough game.
No, don't say that. Aiden Mahaney took the rope from them. Aiden Mahaney, and that's why I love the St. Mary's team. Aiden Mahaney said, screw your rope. I'm taking it from you. And he played as lights out. That was as good a stretch of basketball as we've seen from anyone in college hoops all season long. And he's a freshman.
Right, well, he didn't have sight of the rope when they met again against Gonzaga, and the Zags smoked them. So we've got 85 minutes of play, and Gonzaga has dominated, I'm going to say, 75 minutes of these 85 minutes. This line is stupid. If we saw this line here preseason and it was a St. Mary's Gonzaga pick 'em in the conference tournament, everybody would say it's stupid, and I'm not stupid. So I'm taking Gonzaga to win the conference tournament. Triple bye. You need to win one game, meet St. Mary's in the neutral final, mop the floor with them for another 40 minutes, and let's get this.
So I was at this game last year. I was at Gonzaga St. Mary's in the WCC final last year. I am going again this year. When this opened, was St. Mary's minus 115 and Gonzaga minus 105, and it's been bet this way. I get it.
I bet it Zags minus 115. It's up to Zags minus 125 last I looked.
Yeah, and that's where it is right now. I get it. I understand it. I think, look, I short shrifted this Gonzaga team. I think they showed it in that last matchup what they can do. I thought that St. Mary's was going to be able to get to the rim a little bit easier on them than they did. Maybe that changes on a neutral floor. Not having, remember the St. Mary's team, the best player was a freshman. So sometimes these kids on the road, it's not like you're playing in like really rowdy gyms in the West Coast Conference on a regular basis. It'll be a little bit different dynamic, but Gonzaga I've been to that game. That's going to be a home game for Gonzaga. They plan they're not much to do in Spokane except fly to Vegas in March, and so they all show up, and so that'll be an interesting. I don't know if I'm laying 125, but I think your price at 115 or maybe even like even money.
The thing about it is like. The thing about it is, too, is like with those triple buys and having to win one game to get there, like we're almost just betting the game.
That's
It would have
exactly
to
what
be a
you're
monumental upset. Like we're just betting the game. It's a money line play on the game, essentially.
So the only thing is that I think BYU. Who's the 3 in that league? I'm gonna look real quick. Sorry, this is not great rating.
It's Santa Clara, right?
Are they the 3? Yes, they are. Okay, so Gonzaga's getting it Santa Clara, which means BYU could technically give St. Mary's a pain in the butt too. I would almost rather be the 2 seed than the 1. St. Mary's got the 1 because both they split during the regular season. They both lost to Loyola Marymount, so that was their same loss. So it ended up the tiebreaker was their total ranking in the NET on Monday morning, and it was St. Mary's was 7 and Gonzaga was 10. So that's why St. Mary's was the 1 seed. I'd almost rather punt the 1 seed and be the 2 because I think the better matchup. And that BYU team can just shoot the lights out at times and get on a heater and make your life difficult. Yeah, I can't look. I love St. Mary's. They've been one of my favorite teams to watch all season. I love that story. I love Randy Bennett, but I can't back them here. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you got the right side, and that sucks because believe me, that hurts. It hurts my soul to say it out loud. And I'm going to be in the gym screaming for St. Mary's, but I can't bet them.
The Sweat Fantasy Bracket Madness continues. All right, so at the top of the show, we saw the results of Region G, and voting is live for the O Regional.
Yep, I've retweeted it. Have you? You voted?
Sure haven't. All right, let's bring, I will do that now. Let's bring in our NHL panel. We have DraftKings contributors Jeff Ulrich and Paul Bruno. So guys, in Region O, Sidney Crosby gets a 7 seed. He matches up with Roger Clemens, okay? Crosby, 2-time Hart winner, 2-time Ross. Clemens with the MLB Best 7 Cy Youngs plus an MVP award, 2 20K games. That's pretty big when it comes to fantasy and racking up those points. So, Jeff, who's the better fantasy player?
Man, you know, you got the 2 hockey guys on here. You probably think, oh, this guy's definitely going with Sidney Crosby. I'm not. It's got to be Roger Clemens, unfortunately. There's a couple things that are in play here. But, you know, pitcher is so important for fantasy baseball, especially daily fantasy baseball. Roger Clemens, it's not just the strikeouts that he had. I mean, there's players with better, strikeout per 9 rates than him, but it's the longevity. It's the winning percentage, over 0.65 for his career. That's massive for daily fantasy, getting those wins. The strikeout rate is amazing as well. Obviously, led the league in strikeout numerous times, but the shutouts, I mean, he had 2 years with 7 or more shutouts, and Crosby, pretty solid longevity as well. But the one thing that really just draws Crosby back from being like the dominant fantasy producer, he only had 150 goal season. He's only had 2 seasons where he's had 40 or more goals. Those goals count for so much more. It brings Sid down just a little bit, in my opinion, below Clemens. I'm going with Rocket.
Oh man.
Yes.
Paul, no, you're shaking your head.
I don't often disagree with my illustrious buddy Jeff, but I'm going to do so vehemently here. Sidney Crosby is among the most decorated players in all of hockey history, and he did only get 150 goal season, like Jeff notes, but he scored that in an era where hockey's goal scoring was at a lowest point in almost the last 70 years. So those goals counted for a heck of a lot more than they do now, relatively speaking. And in terms of being decorated with awards, Crosby's at least as decorated as Roger Clemens. And don't forget, in season-long fantasy, there's no comparison. We're talking about a starting pitcher who impacts 20 to 25% of his team's games, where Sidney Crosby, on a points-per-game basis, one of the most prolific scorers in the history of the entire NHL. This isn't close. It's hockey's guy.
Yeah, 2-time Art Ross Trophy winner.
Yeah.
Not too shabby for Sidney Crosby.
No,
all right,
not
we're
too shabby
divided.
at all.
A team divided.
And speaking of Art Ross Trophy winners, Connor McDavid, the highest priced center tonight, guys, on this 5-game NHL slate as we kick off our NHL opening face-off segment here. Paul, coming off his 5th straight multi-goal game to lead the Oilers past your Maple Leafs. He has his first career 50-goal season in the can already, but is he your pick tonight at the dock?
He certainly could be if you can afford to fit him in with those 5 straight 2-goal games. I think he's got a great chance to go over 6 for facing either Connor Hellebuck, who's delivered 2 poor performances in a row the last 2 times out, or Dave no-save Rittich as the backup guy. So a great chance against the Jets. Going to be a wide-open affair. And I think it's all about making room for him in the lineup. If you want to go another way, there's options galore. I'd rather save money in this case and take another star who's on a long, productive role in Carolina's Sebastian Aho. He faces the lowly Coyotes, one of the biggest mismatches on the slate. And this guy's had a scorching hot month of February for $6,700. That's tremendous value. And then a little lower than that, Trevor Zegras got slapped around a little bit by his coach. Figuratively speaking, he got benched in his last start. He's going to be fired up to make good, and I think he's got a great chance at a $5,500 price point against another very bad hockey team in the Montreal Canadiens.
Jeff, what's your move at center tonight in DFS?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have no problem in going up to McDavid here and paying all the way up. I mean, you could certainly, the Eichel and Hughes are also on the slate, but that game, there's a lot of trends there that I think that's going to be a close, low-scoring game. I have more confidence that the Winnipeg-Edmonton game, you can get more of a shootout. So I do like starting with Connor here. He is obviously, past the 50-goal plateau, but Edmonton's in a spot here where I just like their forwards a little bit more as well. I mean, they're in a spot to potentially go on a run, chase the division now. Calgary is falling off. I think things are about to get interesting for the Oilers. I really do. So I like paying up for McDavid, and I love the Zegras call as well. Montreal is not a good defensive team. They're on the road here. Yeah, Zegras got benched his last game. I really like going there for value.
All right, Jeff, take us to the wings and things department. You could take another Connor, Kyle Connor. He is going to cost you $7,800 if you want to pay up a little.
Yeah, and I really don't hate taking some side of the Jets in this game, too. I mean, the Jets are going to score some goals, so I think Kyle Connor is a nice target. I prefer Svechnikov at $6,400. On the road against Arizona, it really doesn't get much better than this. Svechnikov is what we call a little bit more of a streaky producer. He's only got 2 goals in his last 10 games, but the shots on goal are a little bit lower than some of the other elite wingers. But this is also a player who, at any point in these weeks against a matchup like this against Arizona, he can pop off for a couple goals. So the fact he's so much cheaper than Kyle Connor tonight, I really prefer Svechnikov. Only $6,400, and it's a nice fit with McDavid as well. I mean, it's just a little bit cheaper. It's going to save you some money. Down below, too, I think you can look at Andre Palat from the New Jersey Devils. Cheap players, a decent shot rate as well, and just in a nice role for the Devils. So Palat at $3,800 as well. A little bit of value there on the wing.
Paul, what's your strategy on the wing?
Well, I'm glad to see after Jeff shaking me up on the first question that he's back in lockstep. I love that Andrei Svechnikov call. great spot for a guy who's near a point per game status, costing only $6,400, continuing to build my Carolina stack in this one-sided matchup. If you want exposure to the Edmonton captain, though, like we talked about off the show, how about pivoting and taking his line mate, Zach Hyman, who's enjoying a career-best campaign, well over a point per game pace this season? He's going to cost much less at $7,200. And there are another couple of options that I consider in the mid-range on the wings in terms of Seattle's Jared McCann, who leads his club in goal scoring, facing Columbus tonight, another terrible defensive club. And Anaheim's top sniper, going back to build a little mini stack there, Troy Terry gets that favorable matchup against Montreal for only $5,500.
All right, guys, save us some cash. Best value play in DFS on DraftKings, Jeff Ulrich.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a 5-game slate, but we have some pretty decent teams on the slate as well. I think the Seattle Kraken are again just a very good team to look at. Scored a bunch of goals last night. One player I really had my eye on, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not betting him in the goal scoring department, is Oliver Borgstrom. Again, he's got 13 goals on the year, but he's only 4,100, still playing in that kind of top line role. This is a player who's he's just kind of overdue for some positive regression. Bjorkström, again, power play specialist going up against Columbus tonight, 4,100. I really like that. And I think you can look down the Seattle lineup. I mean, Jaden Schwartz at 3,800, I think is very much in play. So I'm really looking at the Kraken as just being like the team to target for some serious value. They're favorites again. Yeah, they've been good on the road all season. Yeah, they've gone through a bit of a hiccup, but this is still a very good offensive team. And they're going to put up more goals, I think, against Columbus tonight. So regardless of if they win this game or not, because, I mean, their goaltending is just as bad as the other side. But I do like the Kraken. And like I said, Bjorkström, I would not be shocked if you saw him score again tonight.
Paul, who sits atop your DraftKings DFS value board tonight?
Well, there's a couple of first-line wingers. Jeff touched on one already that I like. They get first-line minutes against bad hockey teams, so why not complete the stack in Carolina, for instance, with Seth Jarvis, only $4,300 in that matchup. Doubling down with Jeff on the Jaden Schwartz call with that date against Columbus. And then finally, Ivan Barbashev in his new digs for Las Vegas gets first-line minutes against New Jersey. Now, that's a very good hockey team. It should be a tremendous hockey game. But I like the way that the Vegas first line is ticking, bopping right now, and you get Barbashev for only $3,400. That's a great bargain.
All right, Jeff, which game is going over the goal total? Let's talk a little sportsbook here.
I mean, let's just go to Montreal and the Ducks. I mean, we got two bad defensive teams, teams that are both out of it, but, teams with some relatively skilled young forwards. I mean, I think a 6 total here. Yeah, I want to take the over. I know the odds have already moved in that favor a little bit, -120, but, for the last 5 times that Montreal has played Anaheim, the total has gone over as well. I think when you look at what Anaheim is doing, just in terms of who they're using and how they're going to be attacking the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, I don't really have too much worry here that Anaheim's going to be able to create some chances. I mean, that's definitely a concern with Anaheim when they're going up against tougher defensive teams. But I don't think there's anything that Montreal is really going to do to shut down necessarily the Anaheim top line. And obviously, we know that the Ducks allow a ton of scoring chances. I really like the over here. I think both these teams are going to get on the board. I think there's a very good chance we'll see some kind of 4-3, 5-3 night.
Paul, what do you think? Which game is going over the goal total?
I think they are all going to go over tonight. How about that? But in terms of looking for value, I think Carolina at Arizona over 6. I'd say add another half to another full goal there for a better plus payoff. And that one, Carolina might reach that total all by themselves here. And then two very good teams facing off against one another. I touched on New Jersey and Vegas. Neither one getting very good goaltending of late. So do the same thing here. Go over that 6, maybe 6.5 to get a better payoff in that outcome.
And then, Paul, bring us home with your favorite puck line or money line bet tonight.
A trio of puck line bets here for you, my friend. Seattle +150 at Columbus, easily. Edmonton +155 at home against Winnipeg with their suspect goaltending of late, easily again. And maybe for the best payoff, how about New Jersey Devils on the road in Vegas +230 for that puck line payoff?
Jeff Ulrich.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I like all those. I definitely like the Oilers as well at home tonight. I think +155. Again, Winnipeg, played what you call an interesting game their last time out, and they did allow a lot of goals. And I don't think that scenario is good for them going into Edmonton. So I do prefer the Oilers at home +155 after some trade deadline moves. Certainly, again, I mean, I think the Ducks, I would just roll with the Ducks on the money line personally at -125. Again, I like getting Montreal, way obviously an East Coast team traveling west. Anaheim 5-0 in their last 5 games when playing straight up 5-0 against Montreal. Last 5 times they've played in Anaheim. So I think just taking the Anaheim Ducks on the money line is fine. You could certainly look to take them on the puck line, but I mean, we are talking about the Anaheim Ducks, so you may just want to, just give yourself a little bit of a cushion there and just go with the money line. I think -125, considering the team that is traveling to play them. I know it sounds weird to take the Ducks as like the home favorites, but I think this is the spot to do it. So I like that Oilers call. I'm gonna roll with Paul there on the puck line. I think those are just good odds to take a shot. I actually kind of like the Devils call as well, but my favorite is still just going to be taking the Ducks straight up on the money line.
All right, good stuff, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye, dudes, except Jeff. He's got to stick around for XFL.
Yeah, sure. Well, it is March, so basketball is never far from our minds. Let's hear from someone who knows something about brackets. Carlos Boozer, here he is breaking down his pregame set list on the starting 5. Take a look.
So one of the things, Boozer, like that always fascinate me with being like, with the N1 mixtape world and music, and we'll get into the N1 mixtape question in a minute, but the sounds, I always call it the soundtrack of players, right? I got a chance to interview Isaiah Thomas, the great Zeke, once, and I asked him, I said, yo, man, like, what was you listening to, like, when you was, and I was like, he was like, man, you know what we came out to? Houdini, the freaks come out at night. He said, we got wild at nighttime, and I was like, he was like, me, Bill Lampere, that song used to pump us up, and like, I think now, kids, we know what LeBron is listening to with Future and like Lil Baby and Lil Durk, but like, what was you listening to when you came in, like some of them songs that you had you like, oh yeah, I'm about to go out here and destroy it on the night?
Yeah, man, I listened to a lot of Kiss growing up. A lot of Kiss, yeah, a lot of Big, a lot of Pac, Jay. Those are like my names.
That's why he was dominating like that. Huh?
Those are that's why I got hyped. Yeah. You want to get like even X. I used to bump DMX too, because it would get me like, let's go to war kind of mentality. You want to bump something that's gonna be your like who you're gonna be on the court. Like who I am off the court and who I step into, my alter ego on the court, was 2 different people. So I needed something to listen to that would get me into my alter ego.
DraftKings presents Starting 5 live from the compound.
All right, everyone, let's focus in once again on the Sweat Fantasy Bracket Madness, Region O. Jeff Ulrich, Pierce Dietrich, listen to me here. Randy Moss, right? So Randy Moss going up against Mike Trout. Moss would probably be pretty good in the XFL, which will get your XFL DFS picks coming up. But he was extremely good in the NFL. Lower seed matchup against Mike Trout, who is widely regarded as one of the best baseball players to ever step foot and be born on the planet Earth, the gold standard for WAR. Who is the better fantasy player here? Pierce Dietrich, come on. I love your hot takes.
I don't know how hot this is going to be, but it's Mike Trout. Seems like the obvious pick in this situation. It's tough to compare an NFL player to an MLB player because MLB players fail so often. And Trout has days, if you play DFS, where he puts up a goose egg, but that's just the success rate in Major League Baseball just not comparable to the NFL. You might remember, like 2022, Trout had that insane run of 7 games in a row with a home run. It's actually kind of interesting. Well, I mean, if you look at Moss, he had that crazy game with Minnesota where he had 3 catches for 163 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, they're both like these home run type hitters. I think I just go with Trout. Again, I'm leaning more towards a DFS bias. Moss had some pretty big years, but I don't know. I just take more of the modern guys. Sorry.
By the way, our audience was definitely watching yesterday because after your heartfelt story about writing Michael Johnson a fan letter and then just an
Magic Johnson.
What did I say?
Michael Johnson.
Michael Johnson. I was sorry about that. Anyway, Magic Johnson.
I was like, who the
Everybody know, right? I'm just making up athletes now in this bracket.
No, Michael Johnson's a famous track athlete.
Exactly, dude.
But that's not who Pierce wrote his letter to.
Background I didn't know about, man. I mean, come on.
Pierce, who are you more likely to write a letter to, Randy Moss or Mike Trout?
Oh, it's definitely Mike Trout. He's a huge baseball nerd.
No comment.
Jeff, who are you voting for here?
Look, every year in March Madness, Emerson, there's upsets. The 12 seed the 15 seed taken down. Yeah, there's an upset here. I'm going with the GOAT, Randy Moss, man. Are you kidding me? There's no way I'm picking against Randy Moss. I mean, what do we want in a wide receiver? We want a guy who goes out and gets it, who gets in the end zone. Randy Moss, 5 times led the league in receiving touchdowns. This guy, from a DFS, daily fantasy perspective, he's an absolute slate breaker. That's what we want. Yes, Mike Trout, consistent. You want to get in there for season-long fantasy baseball, or like the guys who play every day? Sure, he's great. You know what? He's never hit 50 home runs. Randy Moss is the home run king in the NFL, man. I mean, absolutely. There's nobody over the last 20 years, I would say, from a wide receiver perspective, who really compares to him in terms of that regard. I know there's guys who have catched a billion passes. Cooper Kupp had a nice season. Antonio Brown had a couple nice seasons, but Randy Moss did it for so long, man, and put up so many big games. I'm going to call the upset here. I think Randy Moss is a better fantasy player. I really do.
Yes. I love that, especially if it's 2007 Randy Moss. Give it to me.
Exactly. I mean, pick a year. 2007 Randy Moss, 2003 Randy Moss was pretty good.
He was unstoppable in NFL 2K1.
Dante Culpepper. If you drafted Dante Culpepper and Randy Moss together, you won every league that year. Randy Moss is a fantastic fantasy player.
Even him and Randall Cunningham was pretty solid.
Yeah. Dante Culpepper, built by
15
UCF,
won that
Jeff.
year.
All right, speaking of elite football players, all right, let's go.
Wow, what a segue.
Yeah, what a segue. XFL Week 3, baby. Let's go. We're going to do a little preview here. And I just want to say, through the first 2 weeks, 6 of the 8 games were decided in the fourth quarter, 5 coming down to the last drive. So it has been extremely competitive.
That's because that 3-point conversion thing, dude.
Yeah. So let's start with DFS. Who is your favorite quarterback this weekend, Jeff?
I mean, look, quarterback to me is extremely simple in the XFL at this point, because there's about 2 guys you can trust. Everyone else is on the verge of getting pulled, or they're going to be in like legit timeshares. I mean, Drew Plitt was terrible. I don't even know if he's going to start. Luis Perez got pulled for Hundley. Yeah, Pierce can give me some color on this. I don't know. Jordan Ta'amu is probably not going to play a full game. It's DiNucci or it's McCarron. I mean, I'm just going to roll with my boy A.J. McCarron because I just think he's slightly better. And he's just got a little bit more upside involved. Obviously, 20 points in week 1, had a really solid week 2 as well. It's a tougher matchup. It is. I mean, Greg Williams' defense in DC has probably been one of the best. But, I think A.J. McCarron and St. Louis are equipped to handle it. They've got 3 legitimate wide receivers. They've got one of the best rooms there. And I think they have the best signal caller in the league. I really do. A.J. McCarron was legit NFL backup material, the guy you'd want to kind of like, maybe carry your team for a couple weeks. I don't think he's going to be fazed by this DC Defenders team, who I think is a little bit overrated. So just pay up for McCarron. That's easily the safest play, and I think there's still tons of upside regardless of the matchup.
All right, Pierce, who's your pick for QB?
Let's add one more guy to the list that's safe. Brandon Silvers, the quarterback out of Troy. Air raid offense in college. I remember him beating my beloved Ohio Bobcats in some rando bowl in 2016. But he's been pretty confident, second in pass attempts, second in passing yards, leads the league in passing touchdowns. The stats on the screen aren't eye-popping, but that's because we're trying to compare it to the NFL. That doesn't make any sense. You just need to compare it in relationship to the other XFL quarterbacks. And in those terms, he's on top of the league. Like Jeff mentioned, we want to pick a guy that's going to play the entire game. Silvers will play the entire game. He's not going to crush the scoreboard, but he scored 16 DKFP in the first 2 weeks. You will gladly take that in the XFL.
Jeff Ulrich, which XFL running back are you high on here for week 3?
Yeah, there's a couple you could look to. I mean, I think that you can go a little bit cheaper at running back. Like, I think Jermaine Martin is actually kind of interesting. I know the Guardians are terrible, but the one thing that they are doing is running the ball a lot. And, like, Martin has kind of a very significant role. And Arlington, again, they're not the greatest team. I don't know if I'm ready to call for the upset here with Orlando, but I think Jermaine Martin is in a situation where at 7,800, like he may get as many touches as any lead running back on the slate. He's involved a little bit in the passing game as well. I think Martin's a really solid pick this week. I mean, you could certainly pay up for a guy like Kalen Bailich again, who I think is also a really good target, but I like the value getting with Jermaine Martin. He's a little bit cheaper. I don't think he's going to be heavily owned because Orlando's the big underdog, but I really think he's going to get the workload is going to be there regardless of the score, because Orlando's just, that's what they seem to want to do, is run the ball, which is probably a good strategy because their quarterbacks are legitimately the worst in the league.
Pierce, who's your top running back this weekend?
Max Borgi leads the league in rushing touchdowns, fourth in snaps, leads the league in missed tackles. He looks pretty good. He's got the highest PFF receiving grade for a running back, and no one is even close to him. We expected him to be a strong receiving running back coming out of Washington State. He was part of that offense that was pretty productive. He's a very interesting college football DFS play. He was actually a top 15 guy from the Power 5 schools when we looked at the draft board going to the NFL. It didn't really work out for him, but he's now playing in the NFL or the XFL, getting enough snaps, getting enough action. As you mentioned earlier, with these games never being really out of hand because of the extra points, when you've got a running back that can receive out of the backfield, he's going to be a target and really sneakily sneak some points away on these extra point attempts that people just are overlooking. So Borgi and his dual threat ability really boosts him up the board.
Speaking of receiving, Pierce, who's a wide receiver that you like?
I'll just go back to Ja'Carr Pearson. Had a big week in week one, not really that big of a week two, but we've got such a small sample size. If you want to overreact to, oh, well, his numbers went down in week two. Look, we're looking at 2 games in the XFL. What are we going to do? It's a short week for that team. They've had extra days to prepare. I think they're going to be, you can't overlook having extra days to prepare in a developmental league. Plays with one quarterback that we can trust in Ben DiNucci and June Jones with the high-powered offense of passive attack. Big week in week one. I wouldn't be surprised to see him going back and having another big week. He leads the league in basically all the stats that matter.
All right, Jeff, wide receiver, who do you like?
Yeah, no, I definitely do not mind going back to Pearson as well. I think Ben Putman is a really, really solid value for Houston down there at 4,400. Again, 4 catches in his last game. He's a solid receiver. I mean, he played in the NFL for a very brief stint, but I get attached to a solid team with Houston. And again, like Pierce mentioned, Brandon Silvers, a pretty solid quarterback. I mean, he's definitely would rank third on my list there as well. Doesn't turn the ball over a ton. Pretty efficient for an XFL quarterback. I think Ben Putman is just a really solid value to look for to pair with a guy like Pearson. And I mean, I think if you're looking to take a shot, and you should be this week, in any week in the XFL, because as Pierce mentioned, like the sample size here, you don't need to get over concerned about 1 week. Some of these teams are just going to be really bad. I think Martavius Bryant is actually like a really good bounce back candidate here. Vegas hasn't been terrible, and they're going to be at home this week against Seattle, who's allowed some scoring drives at the end. I think Bryant is a guy who could just find the end zone here, potentially bust out. He's 8,000, should be really low coming off basically a nothing game. So.
Jeff, we'll get you out of here with this. Favorite XFL bet for the weekend slate?
Yeah, I do like. I'm just going to take the Seattle Sea Dragons to cover here. This is a team that's been hard luck, losers the first couple times out, but they have a legit offense. Ben DiNucci's played well, limited the turnovers. I talk about Vegas maybe popping up a bit, but they're still the inferior team here. I know it's 3. I wish you could get down to 2.5, but I think just taking Seattle to cover here is absolutely fine. I know we've seen a lot of close games, but I think Seattle breaks out of their funk here. You can look to the money line if you want. You're only getting -170, but I'm just going to take them to cover.
Game bet or prop? What you got, Pierce?
Battlehawks +3 road dogs. They covered and won outright in their last game. The road dogs, again, I think we're overrating the road advantage given the way that the XFL sets up. And all they do is win. A.J. McCarron may not pile up the stats, but when it comes to the fourth quarter, he gets the job done. Dare I say, looks like a young Tom Brady out there getting the job done. They also are coming off of an extended break since they played in that Thursday game. And as I mentioned before, in the XFL, in a developmental league, having extra reps, extra practice time, I think that's absolutely going to pay dividends. I cannot believe they're getting points. I would consider taking them and the money line the way that they've been playing, especially in the fourth quarter the last 2 weeks.
I can't believe that you compared him to a young Tom Brady when the young Tommy Maddox comparison was right there. The OG from the original XFL League, Pierce. That was a big miss by you, pal.
Damn, Pierce. Well, we really hope that you don't have more of those as you're going to stick around, Pierce.
Yeah.
What's he talking about now?
We got to preview this weekend's races in F1 and
Jeff's
NASCAR.
gone.
So, Jeff,
Jeff's
you're
out
of here. Let's take a look. 2023 Formula One futures. These are what you can snag on the DraftKings Sportsbook right now. A couple of dudes who are at the top of the board. Speaking of dudes at the top of the board, Pierce Dietrich, you're back. F1 kicks off Sunday in Bahrain. No surprise, Verstappen, who is at the top of the board for futures, is the favorite in this one as well to bring home another championship. Looking at Leclerc, though, for a future bet here, maybe?
Nope, you can't go to Leclerc here. Last season, there was a lot of hype around Ferrari, and they benefited from extra wind tunnel time and money and resources going into the team, and they were making the new change in the equipment. This year, there isn't any hype. They've changed team principles, and we've already seen in testing and in basically the 2 practices already today that Ferrari, I mean, they'll have a fine season, but there's no stopping Red Bull. And on the other side, Red Bull came into last season like, we think they're going to be pretty good. And Verstappen went on to win the most wins ever in a single season. And this year, they're even more confident. This year, there is big-time hype around Red Bull. And so far through testing and through practice, they've demonstrated that they're the team to beat. I just cannot see anyone winning the championship other than Verstappen. Maybe you want to look at like Checo Perez today as a possible bet. But as far as futures, I am not interested in Leclerc or any of those guys.
All right, what about for this weekend, though? The first on a 23 race calendar in 2023. What's a bet you like?
The first one I would look at is Sergio Perez to run the fastest lap. The Red Bulls are clearly the fastest cars. And even though Max Verstappen won 15 races last season, he didn't run the fastest lap in each of those races. It doesn't really matter if you're leading. You don't really need to go out and get the glory run, although you enjoy having that extra point. But Verstappen didn't really need those points at the end of the season. He locked up the championship very early on. And so we could see Checo, who has pretty fast of a car, either get a tow DRS-wise. I mean, he could possibly compete. So far in practice, he has been just as fast as Verstappen. And you could also see late in the race, Verstappen's got the win in the bank, and Checo puts on some fresh tires and just goes out there purely to run a fast lap to score an extra point. And then I would also consider Kevin Magnussen to get a top 6 finish at plus 1,600. Looked pretty good in FP1, got a top 5 finish at this track last season. Haas has been decent in the offseason. So that's a little bit more of a long shot, but it's worth considering.
All right, Pierce, let's make the left turn to NASCAR here.
See what you did there.
Pennzoil 400 is in Las Vegas. What's your DFS approach, and who's a top price guy that you're looking to roster? Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, some dudes who are going to be pretty expensive there.
Those are all good picks. I think probably better picks to win the race in terms of DFS. I'm going to go after Ross Chastain. Chastain was excellent at Las Vegas last season. He led the most laps in both races. Chastain finished top 3 last week, was contending for the race. These Trackhouse cars are very fast. But what you really love about Ross Chastain in DFS, he probably isn't going to win the race, but he is very aggressive. He's very aggressive on restarts. He likes to pass people. He likes to lead laps. Whereas some of the veteran drivers may take the time, may take it easy, aren't as aggressive, don't really care about leading a meaningless lap in the middle of the race. Chastain does. And so Chastain might not win the race, but if you're looking for laps led and fast lap points, Chastain has been the guy to go to over the last season.
What about a cheaper option for Las Vegas and DFS? I've got your article here pulled up on DK Nation, and cheapest dude in your top 15 DFS rankings, Justin Haley at $5,900, dude.
That is exactly where I would go. The Colleague Racing cars were excellent last season in the fall Las Vegas race. Both were top 15 cars. Both were in the optimal lineup. And you can even go back to the spring race. Haley had a top 20 car there as well. And then last week, this is what really makes this play interesting, is that both the Colleague cars wrecked. And so the public's probably going to be pretty low on these guys and not really believe in them. And I mean, rightfully so. We didn't get to see what they had. But Haley said before both cars wrecked or suffered damage that his car had a lot of speed. So I would imagine he's going to have a fast car again at Las Vegas. They understood the setup last week. A top 15 at this price, that's going to work.
All right, Pierce, best bet on the DK Sportsbook for this one.
So earlier this week, I had Daniel Suarez at plus 5,000. That's now shifted to plus 2,500. So hopefully you got in early on that, read my DK Nation article. He was plus 5,000 last week, ended up finishing 4th. He was right there. So that was a decent long shot, probably not nearly as bullish on it at this point. Probably, one that I will throw out that is really interesting, and this is a little bit more narrative driven, but Kyle Busch is plus 3,000 to sweep the weekend. That means he's going to win the truck race, the Xfinity race, and the Cup Series race. He looked really good last week. I think he has a point to prove now that he's shifted to RCR. And oh, by the way, Las Vegas is his hometown track. And I don't think it's much of a stretch to think that he could win the truck race or the Xfinity race. And we already saw what he was capable of last week by winning at Fontana. When he gets hot, when he gets streaky, we've seen him do this before. So Kyle Busch plus 3,000 to sweep the weekend.
Pierce Dietrich, last question for you. It's the most important. Your bet to win the Pennzoil 400.
Give me Truex at plus 1,200. I don't want to go too far with the long shots, but you got to have a guy that's running up close towards the end, and we typically see a caution late in this race. And so whoever, like last year, Alex Bowman out of nowhere, we get a caution, and he goes from the 5th place driver to the winning driver. We also saw Joey Logano come alive in the fall race after a series of cautions. Truex has terrible luck, but his car's been very fast. JGR cars have been absolutely monsters at Las Vegas. If he can just not have any bad luck and just have normal luck, then he can win this race.
All right, good stuff, Pierce. Thank you so
Later,
much.
dude.
That is a show.
Woo!
Thank you for joining us on a Friday edition of The Sweat. We will be back Monday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And go to the DK Live Twitter. Vote for the Sweat Fantasy
You
Bracket.
have to do that.
It's going to be awesome. We're going to have more results, more things to vote on come Monday at 11 a.m. We'll see you then.